Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, and otherworldly and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, creepinitrealshow.com.
Hello and welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show. This is Miss Moni, your main host for today, and we will be talking about Black Christmas today, actually, the 2006 version, and what inspired us to do so is the fact that there's a brand new version coming out that looks nothing like the 1974 or the 2006 version. So I thought we would discuss. Meanwhile, I would like to introduce my co-host, my only co-host for today, who puts the lust in illustrious, Miss Christy.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here, ready to discuss some Creepin' It Real topics. It's been a spell, so I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, we've had some time off, and I've been doing lots of ghost hunting in that time.
Ooh.
Wookie shit.
I'm ready.
So,
I am ready for the ghost
ready.
hunting. Yes, I have been trying to psych myself up to do some shit around here in Georgia, so maybe
Nice. Do you have any particular plans, or?
Yeah, there's this place called Hell's Church that is...
Ooh, oh, that's right. You were telling me about that.
And then, of course, there's the stomping grounds around my house. And, I mean, we live near the mansion that was the show, what was it, Haunting of Hill House. And it's supposedly,
cool.
part of it is supposedly haunted, though some of it is new. And there's so much shit around here that I could look at, and I just haven't taken the time. So I've been thinking about it recently, and I think it's time to delve into the haunted Georgia. And I travel a lot. So, like, I was in Santa Fe, and I was drunk most of the time, so opportunity. It was my sister's 50th birthday, so we were throwing down. And so we
like a good trip, though.
Yeah, we had a great time. It was just a lot of drinking, and then I travel with work, and I'm like, why am I not, making a couple of stops here and there, taking opportunities to check out some good haunted shit. So I'm going to make that a priority now. Just because you've inspired me.
Oh, good.
No, you've inspired
me. I've been doing a lot, and I'm actually headed to New York Comic-Con in about a week, less than a week here. Mm-hmm. And what's exciting about that, besides the obvious, is that I will be doing a private tour of Haunted Hell's Kitchen.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm super excited.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah. So, why don't you? I have actually a ghost hunt experience to talk about, but I want to hear your weird news first.
So this subject is on my show list of shows that I want to talk about. I'm not going to do it this next show because I don't think it's very Halloween-y, and I want our show topics to be kind of Halloween-y. So gotcha. I'm going to put it off, but I did do some research on it just to see kind of if I was going to, and then I changed my mind. But there's some interesting developments in, if anybody's familiar with the I'm going to butcher this and I apologize, the Dyatlov Pass incident. So it happened in 1959 in Russia, and it's a really weird story. And there was actually a movie called Devil's Pass that was made sort of around it, where these people go back to the scene to kind of investigate. And of course, it's a horror movie, so things go wrong. But the way that this happened is so bizarre and so weird that even before this new development that a doctor is suggesting, there's a lot of people that tie this to a paranormal situation just based on the bodies and how they were found. So a doctor, one of the lead doctors in the investigation, is now claiming that he thinks the injuries of these people that were killed could have been a Yeti. So it's really...
Of course it was.
Right. I mean...
I already believe it.
First of all, so there's in the diary of these people that were doing this trip, we're actually talking about the sightings that had been going on there recently before this happened. But like They were all found dead. Some of them had missing eyes and skull fractures. They were in their underwear. Their tent was cut from the inside out. So instead of going out of the door of the tent, they cut themselves out. It was, they didn't have their shoes on. So, I mean, all of them escaped quickly. I just don't see like an animal causing that much panic. So that's what this guy's saying too. So in 1959, 9 cross-country skiers were killed in a notorious, here we are, Dia to Love Pass incident. Some found with fractured skulls and chest injuries, and others with eyes missing. Leading doctors now claim the injuries of the group are from a big creature. So that's his claim. A lot of them perished from hypothermia because they were literally in their underwear when they ran out of their tents, and just socks.
Didn't we do this story, not with the Yeti slant, but I think we talked about this story before.
I don't think we have.
We did.
Have? When? I don't remember.
It's a scary ass. Yeah, we went into this whole thing because, yes, we did. Now, not with the Yeti slant. So basically, you're updating us, which is awesome. Also, this guy's name is Seaman. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, that's
it
unfortunate.
is.
I'm sure it doesn't translate in his
Probably
language.
In Russian, that's not a big deal. Yeah.
Maybe there's like a different way to pronounce it, but it's still spelled semen. So, yeah, we did, because this Devil's Pass is notorious for a lot of other things, and this is one of the scariest fucking stories in terms of like what did kill these people.
Right.
So, but a lot of people think it was like demons or things that came, because still, even if it was a Yeti coming from the inside out, that's kind of an interesting, like, did he like appear in the middle of their tent and then fuck shit up? I don't know.
Well, I think the Yeti was probably at the front of the tent, and to escape, they couldn't leave out the front, so they cut through the back, like the people that were in the tent, like cut through the back with a knife to escape. And they're saying the only other thing it could be is a brown bear, but they're saying it was in February and they hibernate through the winter.
It was way too cold at the time.
I think. So that's kind of why they're kind of bringing this into a possibility of an abominable snowman, or Yeti, which I think is basically the same thing. So, so it's actually happening like a lot in scientific circles, like more than just him or talking about it. They don't really know what else it could be. So, they were definitely
aliens,
right?
I mean, this is you. Why don't
be.
You think it's aliens?
I mean, it could be. You know me. But I'm all about rounding out. Not everything's aliens. Now it could be other interesting. It could be the Atacamamba, whatever little guy. You know he.
Oh yeah, little Adam. Yeah,
could be anything.
The cutest thing to die. I would have been like, you're killing us, but also I love you. So,
yeah,
there's that.
And then like they show pictures of the lady, one of the ladies in the group. Her body was found kneeling in like a snowbank with broken ribs, like she's like something squeezed her to death. Like I
wish we could remember what the whole slant of the episode that we were doing. It might have been like UFOs or demons. I'm not sure what they thought originally had done that.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I don't even remember us doing it. So, my memory's shot. But I really do want to do an extensive conversation about this incident, and the real dive of details that how these bodies were found, and what now we can also introduce the fact that it could be a Yeti. So I thought that was an interesting addition to the story, and it's definitely something that I want to spend a whole episode on at some point, but not now.
So. I mean, we could dress the Yeti up in a Halloween costume, like as a serial killer, and it would be Halloweeny.
Yeah. We can do that one in the winter when it's cold, and not for you, but most of everybody else that's listening. Yeah, it's cold.
What is winter? What is weather?
I know you guys don't understand the concept of seasons, but they do exist.
Oh my God! Even New York is projected in a week from now to be in the high 70s with like 50% humidity and 0% chance of rain. Because I was like, I'm gonna get fall weather, and I've been like prepping my fall fashion to be in New York City. Nope, it's gonna be hotter than balls. So.
Sorry.
Yeah, too. I've told you I've never seen snowfall. Like every time I try to go to where there is snow during a season when that would be happening, it is like unseasonably warm whenever I get there. It doesn't matter where it is. It
Because
just
you're
stops
bringing your
happening when I get there.
California vibe with you, and it just
I'm just so
warms
hot.
everything
What
up.
can I say? The heat turns up. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it is. It's really strange. I've literally I've gone when there's ice now on the ground. Like no fresh powder have I ever seen, let alone falling from the sky. It's never happened. So,
I'm
it's maybe
sorry.
this year. Yeah, I'll come to Georgia. Do you guys get snow where you are?
Oh, yeah, well, we get snow here. We usually get ice snow because it's so humid here that when it snows,
Ah,
it turns into ice, like basically like ice drops falling on you.
that sounds like neck breaking type of shit, though.
But then
Like
we're
slippery.
yeah, but we're 45 minutes from the mountains, so we just have to drive 45 minutes, and we got lots of snow. So
Okay, I'm
yes, come on down, come on over, whatever.
Well, if I go any further down, I'll be in Mexico.
Exactly.
So I grew up in Orange County, and there is an area called Black Star Canyon. And when I was little, so we're talking 30 plus years ago, it was like, you don't go there. There's satanic shit that goes down there, blah, blah, blah. And truly, there is a lot of historic, basically, hangings of horse thieves or perceived horse thieves. There's a lot of killing of Native Americans there, like a lot of slaughter of Native Americans. A lot of war, a lot of random things have occurred. Miners have died. Tuberculosis outbreaks they mined for coal in Black Star Canyon. So they had a creek there that actually was someplace where people came kind of on a retreat, believing that it would cure their TB, but instead they would end up perishing anyway. So a lot of that, there's actually a La Llorona myth out there as well. There's a lot of different theories as to why the women either might have lost children or killed their own children and obviously mourned for them. But one of the more prevalent historical theories is that the white men would come in and see how beautiful the natives were and seek to take the children home for their own wives. And so a woman or women would kill their babies, would drown their children in order to keep them from being taken by these white devils. So, and then obviously mourn and possibly take their own lives afterward. At any rate, I was told never to go there also from a perspective of a lot of homeless people live there. A lot of people do still to this day do satanic rituals or what they think are satanic rituals, shit they learn on the internet. But you could run into a lot of human flesh and blood issues going up there. So I never did. And we paid a tour guide yesterday, and it was a big group. And I was really excited, but I was a little anxious. Oh my goodness. It's a beautiful, it's not even really like a hike. It's a walk. It's a now, I mean, they've changed it a lot, but it is now a easy parking, well-maintained, wide pathway through what ends up being a private ranch on each side. And the private ranch guy is a little nuts. I forget his name, but he's got barbed wire fence that is also electrified. So you can hear the humming next to you all the way up the trail. And he's got infrared cameras, so it kind of fucks with things when you think you're having a ghost experience and you try to take photos. There's like red blinking in the darkness all around. Cameras, it's kind of a pain in the ass. But from a historical perspective, it's really cool. Our guide was extremely knowledgeable, and we also let's see, the hike was good. We saw a lot of nature. So we saw a bat, a shooting star.
Cool.
We ran into a live tarantula who was on his way to look for a mate. Yeah, he was a big dude. I don't do spiders. I almost ran my ass right into an electric fence trying to get out of the way of him. But we saw a lot of cool birds and wildlife, and we had some experiences though. For instance, as I was walking, I realize now I've caught a photo of an anomaly that no one can explain once when I was younger, but I've never really seen with my eyes, like in real time, a ghost. And I was just walking and I'm keeping my eyes peeled. And this was before we get to the fences where the camera lights could have, been a problem. And the only way I can describe this, and it's going to sound funny. Have you seen the Harry Potter movies with the Patronuses?
Yeah.
Okay, so a deer Patronus because it was loping, like jumping, like hopping away like a deer would, the way that they run, that specific gait that they have, on all fours and graceful, but also glowing, and disappeared, like through heavy brush, and it didn't make a sound in the brush, and it was just whoop, gone. And then I was like, what the fuck was that? And it was so weird. And then I can even tell you how many times like it kind of, leaped and hit the ground, and then before it disappeared, like it was really interesting. And then the other thing that happened was we were told to go across this little bridge, and then the guide actually stopped and allowed us to go around the bend in smaller groups, which was great because the group we were with had some like tween age kids who were super noisy and people who were just being stupid. So we went up around the bend without anybody else, and I go to this bridge, and I just burst into tears, like violent, obnoxious, not how I cry if I actually do cry in real life, which doesn't happen often, tears. And it was right after he had told the story about women having to lose their children up here. So I was thinking that it was someone who felt that way, because then we started to hear something in the bushes, and we stopped. We tried to hear it again. We tried testing, like, was it our footsteps? Was this and that? We heard what sounded like a woman wailing just for a few seconds, but two separate occasions right after that happened. And so the tour guide had asked us, like, if you experience anything, take me aside and let me know, because I'm always curious. So we took him aside, and I told him, he's like, actually, I heard you crying, because I like, he really pays attention to see if the group is safe.
Right.
And he was like, oh yeah, I heard that. And are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I don't feel sad, but like all this, and I didn't feel it coming on. It was just like, I was bawling. And then as soon as I kept walking past that space, it was over. And he was like, well, a lot of other clairvoyants have come by and said that they have seen that there's a man, and he had the name of him and the whole background, but who stands by that bridge. Maybe he pushed that thought into your head. And that started to freak me out a little bit, because I've had lots of ghostly experiences. I've never felt like I was being manipulated in a way that I didn't realize I was being manipulated. Like, I've had ghosts try to mess around, and I've been like, fuck you, we're done here. But the fact that I actually felt that loss, and it made me react emotionally, and then he's suggesting that maybe instead of it actually being something sad, it was somebody putting that in my head on purpose. So that kind of like pissed me off and kind of freaked me out a little. So on our way back over the bridge again, I like summoned all of sort of my angry annoyance and resolve, and was just like, and I actually said it out loud, not very loud, like nobody else heard me, but I was just like, you stay away from me. And that was it. I didn't have any other issues the entire rest of the 2 miles back down the trail. So, I just wanted to be clear in case it was something with bad intentions. If it was something sad, well, I felt you're sad, and I feel you, and, thanks for sharing that, and I hope you feel better now that I've shared that with you. But if you're something that's trying to mess with me, fuck that. So that was my Black Star Canyon ghost hike, and I would totally go back. It's not what people think it is. I mean, there's lots of cool nature and stuff, but it is a very well-maintained road, and I recommend it if you like to hike.
Cool. That sounds interesting. Cool. I like haunted stuff.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to roll into a remake that is it has 4 stars on IMDb. It sounds, I like the more slasher serial killer stuff. I know it's not necessarily Christie's jam, but have you seen the original, the 1974 Black Christmas?
Yeah, but first of all, I have to say that I confused my Christmas movies up. So I thought that this was the movie where there's like the anthology, like a trilogy or whatever. Like it's several stories in one over Christmas. And I think it was done in like 2016. So when I started watching it, I'd never seen this, but I had confused those. So I was like, oh, I've seen this. Oh, this is good. And then I start watching this movie, and I'm like, okay, this is not what I thought that this movie was. I mean, it was good. I mean, it was fine. It was just not what I thought it was. So then I was really confused, and I had to look up what the hell did I think it was? And now I've already forgotten what I thought it was. But anyway,
I've never even heard of what you're saying, and I would love to know if you.
It's actually really good. I'm looking it up now, and it was like a movie that had, like the ones that have several movies in one. I think it was an anthology. Is that what that means? Anthology? I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
trilogy, anthology, whatever. No, that's not it. Christmas with the Cranks. Get the fuck out of here. Sorry. Google, you're high. Go home.
I'll let you look it up, and I will talk about the cast of this one a little bit. Let me know when you find it, though.
I think I found it. I think it's a Christmas horror story. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh.
I think I found it. A Christmas horror story.
And you liked it well enough,
I mean,
right?
it was different. It was different.
Okay.
Interwoven stories that take place, on Christmas Eve, as told by one festive radio host.
They took it from, oh my gosh, what's the name of it? The Halloween one that I love, with the little dude that kills. It's like mini stories, and Anna Paquin's in it.
Oh, right. God, I can't remember the name of that one either.
I love that
boy. We're like, that one with the thing and the stuff.
We're such professionals here.
I know that also William Shatner is in this movie that I was talking about. And
cool.
Yeah, so he plays, I believe he plays the radio host guy. But anyway, something to check out, and it's kind of funny. It's funny and scary, if that makes sense. It's kind of ridiculous and weird, but it's like family. It's the one, and I think it has Toni Collette in it. You know what?
You're not talking about Krampus. Krampus has Toni Collette.
I'm probably thinking of that one, and I'm getting the other one. I just combined them all together. Let me get my shit straight before I keep talking. So you talk about this movie, and I'll shut up.
Black Christmas is a classic, especially if you like slasher films, and it's a co-ed, and it's that whole like when a stranger calls kind of vibe where you get the creepy phone calls. I think I really like that film, and if you like slashers, that's one to check out. What prompted me to do this movie in general was the trailers hit about 2 weeks ago now, the new remake of Black Christmas, which stars Carrie Ewells, but it looks completely different. And I don't think it looks good, but regardless, at best, it doesn't look like it's anything like the original or even the first remake. And I didn't realize that the first remake that we're going to talk about today was from 2006. Time flies so quickly. I was just like, didn't they just remake that? Well, yeah, they remade it like 10 years ago almost now. So we're getting old. But
yes,
this one, the 2006 version, is on Amazon Prime and on YouTube. And it stars Katie Cassidy, Michelle Trachtenberg, Lacey Chatbert is in it, Mary Elizabeth Weinstead? I don't even pronounce things well. Anyway, you'll recognize a lot of faces in it. That being said, it has a 4.5 on IMDb, and I decided to revisit it and see, because I remembered enjoying it well enough when it came out and feeling like it held up to the original, but I revisited it, and then something cool happened, which is we'll go through the film, but also it was inspired by a real-life serial killer, and his story is fascinating. So
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least the 2006 written version was inspired by this serial killer, and holy crap, his story is way scarier than either of the damn films. So, after his debut feature, Willard, failed to perform. So we're talking about the director. Sorry, his last name is Morgan, but I want to get his first name. We're such professionals today. We need our Yardley. Goodness.
Yardley's the guy that, ties us together and makes us not so
sure. She's like, anyway, well, the guy's last name is Morgan. Fucking IMDb it yourself. But he also did Willard, the remake, and it flopped. So what do you do when a film flops? Well, you get approached, apparently, by Dimension Films to write another remake, which made its money back, but arguably is not well received. So after conceiving the new script, Morgan had intended to rework elements of the film that were left ambiguous or were implied, such as the cryptic phone calls received by the sorority house. While writing the screenplay, he received input from the film's original director, Bob Clark, which I always think it's cool. He gave his blessing for the new one, and they just wanted to explore subplots that had not been fleshed out in the original 1974 film. So Morgan created an extensive subplot for the film's killer, Billy, which introduced a secondary killer in Billy's younger sister, Agnes, which in the original
daughter.
film... Yeah, sister-daughter. Sister-daughter, that's how we do. In the original film, the names Billy and Agnes figure prominently in the obscene phone calls received by the sorority sisters. So in writing the character of Billy, Morgan was inspired by the life of Edmund Kemper, who we will talk about, a real-life serial killer.
I know me some Ed Kemper. Hell yeah.
Yes.
That dude
he's all
is
kinds of fun.
fucked up.
Fucked up. Literally in the head, because he'll fuck you in the head. You're literally, your head.
Literally.
Anyway, yeah.
You're welcome.
So the introduction of Agnes as the second killer was incorporated in part to extend the film's narrative arc. Given that the phone calls from inside the house, plot twist from the '74 film, is really familiar for contemporary audiences. And also, I noticed, side note, they put in that porn element, or like putting your sex tapes out there on the internet was another element that I feel like was updated and kind of unnecessary. But anyway.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just whacked my elbow on the microphone. No, it's fine. It just made this horrible sound. I'll have to edit that out. Sorry, guys. Anyway,
did you hit your funny bone? That ain't funny. You always say you're going to edit it out, but it's totally going to be on.
I totally will forget. I agree with you. I don't understand why that whole porn thing was revenge porn, whatever thing was added. It was
like,
bizarre.
Let's make it modern. We have the internet in it.
I mean, whatever. It doesn't, but it didn't do anything for the show. It just was, to me, I was waiting for that to be something. Yeah, I was like, okay, this is going to come to fruition. And
I mean, it sure pissed Katie Cassidy off.
So right.
But I showed that her boyfriend was a jerk, which we knew. So, yeah.
You could already tell. But I thought that was her. Like, I couldn't tell the girls apart. Like, I was having a hard time of who was dead and alive. Like, she's got blonde hair. She's got blonde hair. Yeah. I mean, that's sorority life, right? But, sorry, sorority sisters. I'm sure y'all are lovely people. But I just personally had a hard time figuring out who was who with his ex-girlfriend and his girlfriend. You know, one was on a porn. Apparently one wasn't. So, yeah, that was a whole other thing that just was confusing and not necessary in the movie, in my opinion. So, anyway.
Yeah. And it was a $10 million movie. It didn't need anyone's help, according to the director. They should have left it alone, but instead they ended up compromising a lot, which brings us to casting.
In casting, the sorority sister characters, Morgan sought actresses who were of the same caliber in order to avoid typecasting of the final girl and the supporting characters. Katie Cassidy, who also had recently had a supporting part in When a Stranger Calls remake, was cast in the lead role of Kelly Presley. Michelle Trachtenberg, who had gained notoriety. God, I cannot talk. Gained notoriety. I take off on the weekends for a reason, Moni. No, I'm just kidding. Who had gained notoriety for her role as Dawn Summers on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, had initially wanted to avoid returning to the horror genre unless she was given the opportunity to die on screen. Trachtenberg read the script for the film in the middle of the night while alone in her home and was unnerved by it, which influenced her decision to sign on to the project. She was cast in the supporting role of Melissa Kitt.
And all this to say, also, there was studio intervention. There was disputes with Dimension Films, with the Weinstein brothers specifically. And I just bring that up because now, knowing what we know about Harvey Weinstein, I really hope all those pretty young girls weren't harassed. But apparently he was very heavily involved, hands-on, on the set. I bet the fucker was hands-on. But anyway... and he also made them put out a theatrical trailer that had, like, nothing to do with the film. Like, none of the stuff that was in the trailer actually was in the film. He also showed the conclusion of Billy being impaled on the hospital Christmas tree topper, which is, like, way to show the ending.
That's weird.
Yeah. It's a weird decision, but maybe he was too busy, anyway. And also there's ended up being two different cuts of the film. There was a less violent one, a less dark one that aired in Europe than what was released out here. So for our spoiler summary, Billy Lenz, a boy born with severe jaundice and constantly abused by his hateful mother, Constance. With the help of her lover, Billy murders Father Frank on Christmas and buries the body in the house's crawl space. To prevent Billy from talking, his mom imprisons him in the attic. Years later, Constance attempts to conceive another child, but realizes that her boyfriend is impotent. So she goes to the attic and rapes her 12-year-old son. So that was fun. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Ew. 9 months later, that's how that works, she gives birth to her daughter, Agnes. Constance uses the occasion of Agnes' birth to further reject Billy, and her boyfriend believes he fathered Agnes. On Christmas Day 1991, Billy escapes from the attic and disfigures 8-year-old Agnes by gouging out her eye. There's a lot of eye poking out and pulling out in this film.
Yeah, you know how I feel about eye things.
Yeah, it's your favorite thing. Mm-hmm. He brutally murders his mother and her lover and is caught by police eating cookies made out of his mother's flesh and sent to a mental asylum.
Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, yep, tell it, girl. Oh, it's my turn. 15 years later, on Christmas Eve, Billy, now 35, escapes from his cell and heads to his former home, now a sorority house. You don't say. For Delta Alpha Kappa at it's Clemson University. The South, they add a P there, and if you go to Clemson and you hear somebody say Clemson, they get angry. So it was at Clemson University outside. Oh, this is Boston. Oh, wrong university. Sorry. But the Clemson in the South, they know what I'm talking about. Anyway, at the house, Claire Crosby, nice name, one of the sorority girls, is murdered in her bedroom by an unknown figure. Meanwhile, Megan Helms begins to hear noises and goes up to the attic to investigate. Upon finding Claire's body in a rocking chair, Megan is attacked and killed by the same assailant. Who could it be? In the living room, the other sorority sisters, Kelly Presley, Melissa Kitt, Heather Fitzgerald, Dana Mathis, and Lauren Hannon, along with their house mother, Miss Mack, receive a threatening call from a stranger.
Miss Mack was a worthless character.
She was. She was like... She first of all was all excited about the Billy story, but the only thing that I thought was great for her is she had the wherewithal and common sense of wanting to get the fuck out of there, although didn't make it.
I'm not leaving, says Katie Cassidy.
What? Get out of here. Really? Okay, you stay in the murder house. Claire's half-sister, Leigh Coven, soon arrives, searching for her. The withdrawn Eve Agnew presents Heather with a glass of unicorn. Unicorn? Before leaving.
Unicorn, not a glass of unicorn.
A glass. With a glass unicorn. Like a glass of unicorn. Is that some sort of shot that I should know of? Because that sounds wonderful. Before leaving the sorority house to go home for the holidays. Okay, so I know that they're doing so her character was so ridiculous. Heather's?
Yeah.
Oh no, the Eve girl. The Eve Agnew girl. Like, you're supposed to think that you're supposed to think that's Agnes. You know what I mean? Like, because she's weird, and why? Okay, if she is that off and weird, why would she be in the sorority? That's all I'm saying. Like, there was a lot of things in this movie that did not make sense to me. That was one of them, but let's move on. Meanwhile, Kelly's boyfriend, Kyle Autry, arrives, but is kicked out when Kelly discovers a video of he and Megan having sex. When the lights suddenly go out, Dana goes to check the power under the house, but encounters the figure in the crawl space and is dragged underneath and killed with a garden fork. Ouch. The girls in the house subsequently receive an indecipherable call from Dana's cell phone. Outside, while searching for Dana, they find Eve's severed head in her car.
Dun, dun, dun. When the police arrive, with the police unable to arrive for a cup of unicorn in time due to the storm, Kelly, Melissa, and Lee decide to stay inside the house, whilst Heather and Mrs. Mack flee. In the car, Heather is murdered. Mrs. Mack is impaled by a falling icicle. I mean, because that happens every day. While Kelly and Lee descend to the garage to investigate, Melissa is attacked and killed by an assailant with a pair of ice skates. Kelly and Lee return upstairs, because that's what you do, you run the wrong way, and find Lauren's eyeless corpse in bed. So that's another one of the eye things. Kyle returns to the house, and the three to go to investigate the attic. While ascending the ladder, Kyle is dragged into the attic and stabbed to death. Good riddance, weirdo. The killer is revealed to be Agnes, who is now an adult. Kelly and Lee watch in horror as Billy appears in the attic wall. There were some cool, creepy scenes, though, where you see, like, girls taking showers and a little tile would move and, like, Billy's eyeball would be there. That was kind of fun. Agnes, along with Billy, attacks Kelly, knocking them out, blah, 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 blah. Kelly and Lee manage to escape before starting a fire, leave Billy and Agnes to burn to death. Later, Kelly and Lee recover at the hospital. Billy, who is partially burned, kills the morgue assistant. While Kelly goes for an x-ray, Agnes, also survived from being burned to death. Well, you weren't burned to death if you survived. Anyway, appears in her hospital room and kills Lee. When Kelly returns to her room, Agnes appears through the ceiling and attacks her. But Kelly uses a defibrillator, which is not even how those work, to kill Agnes. We were like, what the hell? Moments later, Billy enters through the ceiling and chases Kelly, which we've seen the ceiling thing too many times at this point. Kelly to the stairwell. They briefly fight, ending with Kelly pushing Billy off the railing where he is impaled on the tip of a Christmas tree, shown in the frickin' trailer, which kills him. So,
that happened.
Getting through that, it happened. What is your rating on that?
Ugh, I hated this movie. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I love you. I didn't hate it. I mean, they didn't die. Both of them, really. They got burned, and the people thought both of them were dead, and they made it to the hospital. Both of them were alive. Get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that was the most ridiculous thing ever. I give it a 3.5 out of 10. Like, it was the ending just ruined it. Like, I thought up until where, okay, they caught on fire. It
should have ended at the burning thing, huh?
Yeah, I totally think they should have done that. And honestly, the whole living in the walls and the wall thing has been done better. Like the Housebound and those other movies that we've watched, The Boy or whatever, they did it better. It was this weird clusterfuck of random, it was typecast. Everybody was so typecasted, and it just, I mean, why are all these people still at home in their sorority? Like, they go home. Like, newsflash. Yeah. College girls go home to their family over Christmas. It was just no. Like, the whole time, I'm like, no, this wouldn't happen. No, this wouldn't happen. Oh, sure, this girl you're going to accept into your sorority who looks like, what's her name from...
she donated a lot. You don't know. Her family did.
I don't think so. I didn't get that. I didn't get that feeling from the whole situation. But there were so many. I mean, and I could look over all of that until the ending, and the ending just crippled it for me. It was like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? Like, come on. They both lived, and they're both in body bags. Like, you don't think medical people couldn't tell they were still alive? It just, just angered me.
Yeah, I give it a 4. I actually really like the original. I wish they would stop messing with it. The original was one of the first to do the whole call coming from inside the house.
Right.
And one of the first to do possibly the first, unless I'm mistaken, to do the whole living inside the wall and, like, peeking at these hot young women and all that kind of stuff. So this one doesn't hold up, and I fear for what the newest one, I feel like they're just ripping off the name and making a completely different film, which I don't mind a different horror
maybe
Christmas
it's
film,
better, because damn, that shit.
Yeah, so we'll see, and hopefully there'll just be some hot girls dying at worst, so that's cool. But they look like they fight back and all that, and it's empowering, and I mean, that's great, but be hot and run around at least.
I need to see some underwear at least. Yeah. Well,
some titties.
Ta-da!
I want to talk about the real life inspiration. I'm going to have you start for Edmund Emil Kemper III, who inspired this film.
Now you're getting me excited. Yes, girl.
Yeah.
Edmund.
Girl.
Edmund Emil Kemper III was born December 18th, 1948, and is an American serial killer and necrophile who murdered 10 people. He is noted for his large size at 6 feet 9 inches and for his high IQ at 136. Kemper was nicknamed the co-ed killer, as most of his victims were students at coeducational institutions. Weighing 13 pounds as a newborn.
Can you
Dear
imagine?
God, no.
My vagina hurts just talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Kemper was already a head taller than his peers by the age of 4. He was highly intelligent, but exhibited behavior such as cruelty to animals at the age of 10. He buried a cat alive once. It died? Wait.
Ugh.
Oh, once he died, it dug it up. I'm like, he buried a cat alive once it died? What does that? Don't make no sense. But yes, okay, but once it died, he then dug it up, decapitated it, and mounted its head on a spike. Yeah, I think
As
I'd
one
go
does.
at 10. At 10? That's fucked
Yeah.
up. Okay, I would
It's
I would have him committed, and I'd have him on some serious pills by then, but whatever. Kemper later stated
But
that he
you'll find out why.
Yeah, Kemper later stated that he derived pleasure from successfully lying to his family about killing the cat. At the age of 13, he killed another family cat when he perceived it to be favoring his younger sister, Alan Lee Kemper, over him, and kept pieces of it in his closet until his mother found them. Oh my God. Seriously.
Yeah. Good times. So Kemper had a dark fantasy life, as you would imagine. He performed rituals with his younger sister's dolls that culminated in him removing their heads and hands. And on one occasion, when his older sister Susan Kemper teased him and asked why he did not try to kiss his teacher, he replied, "If I kiss her, I'd have to kill her first."
Of course. That's how it's usually done.
Okay. Cute. He also recalled that as a young boy, he would sneak out of the house and, armed with his father's bayonet, go to the second grade teacher's house and watch her through the window. So there's where that voyeurism comes in.
Mm-hmm.
He also had a near-death experiences, multiple, as a child. Once when his older sister tried to push him in front of a train, and another when she successfully pushed him into the deep end of a swimming pool where he almost drowned. He had a close relationship with his father and was devastated when his parents separated in 1957, causing him to be raised by his mother Clarnell in Montana. He had a severely dysfunctional relationship with his mother, who was neurotic, domineering alcoholic, who would frequently belittle, humiliate, and abuse him. Clarnell often made her son sleep in a locked basement because she feared that he would harm his sisters, regularly mocked him for his size — he was 6'4" by the age 15 — and derided him as, quote, a real weirdo. She refused to cuddle him for fear that she would, quote, turn him gay, and told the young Kemper that he reminded her of his father and that no woman would ever love him. At the age of 15, he ran away from home and tried to go to his father in Van Nuys, California. He stayed with his father for a short while until his father sent him to live with his grandparents, who lived on a ranch in the mountains of North Fork. Kemper hated living in North Fork and described his grandfather as senile and said that his grandfather was constantly emasculating me and my grandfather.
On August 27th, 1964, when Kemper was 15, Kemper's grandmother, Maud Matilda Huey Kemper, that's a lot of words, for a name, was sitting at the kitchen table when she and Kemper had an argument. Enraged, Kemper stormed off and retrieved a rifle that his grandfather had given him for hunting. He then returned to the kitchen and fatally shot his grandmother in the head before firing twice more into her back. Some accounts mention that she also suffered multiple post-mortem stab wounds with a kitchen knife. When Kemper's grandfather, Edmund Emil Kemper, came home from grocery shopping, Kemper went outside and fatally shot him in the driveway. He was unsure of what to do next, and so phoned his mother, who urged him to contact the local police. Kemper then called the police and waited for them to take him to custody. When questioned by authorities, Kemper said that he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma, and that he killed his grandfather so he would not have to find out that his wife was dead. Kemper's crimes were deemed incomprehensible for a 15-year-old to commit, and court psychiatrists diagnosed him as paranoid schizophrenic before sending him to the criminally insane psychiatric hospital unit of Atascadero State Hospital in California.
Nice. So at Atascadero, California Youth Authority psychiatrists and social workers strongly disagreed with the court psychiatrist's diagnosis. Their report stated that Kemper showed no flight of ideas, no interference with thought, no expression of delusions or hallucinations, and no evidence of bizarre thinking. I think there's some evidence of bizarre thinking.
Yeah.
And recorded an IQ of 136, which is pretty high. He was re-diagnosed and stated as having a personality trait disturbance, passive-aggressive type. Well, I'd say some of the aggressive comes out more.
Yeah.
Later on,
I would say less passive.
yeah, aggressive. How about that?
Yeah.
He was given another IQ test and resulted in an IQ of 145.
Jesus.
He endeared himself to the shrinks by being a model prisoner and was trained to administer psychiatric tests on the other inmates, because that's what you want. One of the psychiatrists later said he was a very good worker and this is not typical of a sociopath. He really took pride in his work. After his second arrest, Kemper said that being able to understand how the tests function allowed him to manipulate his psychiatrists, and admitted that he learned a lot from the sex offenders to whom he registered tests, for example. They told him it was best to kill a woman after raping her to avoid leaving witnesses. Isn't that lovely? Make sure you kill her after you rape her. Or in his case, kill her before you rape her.
Exactly. He wants them dead before he does anything.
Right. Released in time between murders. So on December 18th, 1969, which was his 21st birthday, Kemper was released on parole. Against the recommendations of the psychiatrist at the hospital, he was released into the care of his mother, Clarnell, who caused all these issues, arguably. She had remarried and took the surname Strandberg, then divorced again. Kemper later demonstrated further to his psychiatrist that he was rehabilitated. And in 1972, they actually expunged his juvenile records.
Jesus.
Yeah. While staying with his mother, he attended college, which was a parole requirement, and he wanted to become a police officer, but was rejected due to his size. So by the time he had left jail at age 21, he was 6'9", and had earned the nickname Big Ed. Kemper maintained relationships with the Santa Cruz police officers despite his rejection from the force. He worked a series of menial jobs before securing employment with the State Highway Department. During this time, his relationship with Clarnell remained toxic and hostile, with mother and son having frequent arguments, which the neighbors often overheard.
Wow. When he had saved enough money, Kemper moved out to live with a friend in Alameda. Here, he still complained of being unable to get away from his mother, as she regularly phoned him and paid him surprise visits. He often had financial difficulties. Okay, wait a minute. So he kills his mom's mother and his mom's father, and she still comes and visits? What the fuck?
Yeah, it's a really fucked up relationship.
Anyway, I just had to say that. He often had financial difficulties, which resulted in him frequently returning to his mother's apartment in Aptos. The same year, he began working for the Highway Department. Kemper began dating a 16-year-old Turlock High School student to whom he would later become engaged. Also during this year, he was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle that he had recently purchased. His arm was badly injured, and he received a $15,000 settlement in a civil suit he filed against the car's driver. While driving around in the 1969 Ford Galaxy he bought with his settlement money, he noticed a large number of young women hitchhiking, and he began storing plastic bags, knives, blankets, and handcuffs in his car, just in case,
Women. Yeah.
Hitchhiking. Hey, what would work out here? He then began picking up girls and peacefully letting them go, according to Kemper. He picked up around 150 such hitchhikers before he felt homicidal, sexual urges, which he called his little zapples, and began acting on them.
Oh, I got the little apples again. I
I
think I need to
got
fuck
those
someone's
little,
brains.
yeah.
Later murders. So between 72 and 73, he killed 8 women in a murder spree that ended with the deaths of his mother and her best friend. So 11-month spree, he killed, excuse me, I'm getting all snotty. I am snotty, but, I'm actually getting snotty in my nose. He'd pick up female students, take them to isolated areas where he'd shoot, stab, smother, or strangle. He would take their bodies back, decapitate them, perform irimatio, which is apparently when you force someone to go down on you on their severed heads, which I guess it's not hard to force a severed head to go down on you.
How does that even work?
What's that?
How does that I'm not even going to ask.
I'm imagining you open the mouth, but the rigor mortis, I don't know what happens to the jaw. Anyway, have sexual intercourse with their corpses, then dismember them. During this 11-month spree, he killed 5 students, 1 high school student, so 5 college, 1 high school, his mother and her friend. He stated in interviews that he would often go hunting for victims after his mother's outbursts towards him, including her refusal to introduce him to women attending the university where she worked. He recalled, she would say, "You're just like your father. You don't deserve to get to know them." Psychiatrists and Kemper himself have given the belief that young women were surrogates for his ultimate target, which was his mother, and that the humiliating acts he committed on his mother's corpse support this hypothesis. So the first woman that he murdered during this spree, so in May of 72, he was driving in Berkeley. He picked up 2 18-year-old hitchhiking Fresno students, Mary Ann Pesch and Anita Mary Lachessa, on the pretext of taking them to Stanford. After driving for an hour, he reached a secluded wooded area near Alameda, which he was familiar with from his work in the highway department. Without alerting his passengers that he'd changed directions where they wanted to go, he had intended to rape them, but had learned from the serial rapist, not in prison, that he shouldn't leave any witnesses. So he handcuffed Pesch and locked Lachessa in the trunk, stabbed and strangled Pesch to death before killing Lachessa in a similar manner. Kemper put the women's bodies in the trunk of his Ford Galaxy and returned to his apartment. He was stopped along the way by a police officer for his broken taillight, but the officer did not detect the corpses in the car. Kemper's roommate was not at home, so he took the bodies into his apartment, where he took photos of, had sexual intercourse with the naked corpses before dismembering them. He then put the body parts into plastic bags, which he later abandoned near Loma Prieta Mountain. Before disposing of Pesch's head and Lachessa's severed heads in the ravine, he basically made the heads go down on him. In August, Pesch's skull was found on Loma Prieta Mountain. An extensive search failed to turn up the rest of her remains or any trace of Lachessa.
Gross. Alrighty. On the evening of September 14th, 1972, Kemper picked up a 15-year-old dance student of Korean and Levadian heritage named Aiko Koo, who had decided to hitchhike to a dance class after missing her bus. He again drove to a remote area and pulled a gun on Koo before accidentally locking himself out of his car.
Doe.
I hate when that happens. However, Koo let him back inside.
Can you believe that?
Kemper had previously gained the 15-year-old's trust while holding her at gunpoint.
That's so sad.
I don't even understand. Back inside the car, he proceeded to choke her unconscious and rape her and kill her. He subsequently packed her body into the trunk of his car, had a few drinks at a nearby bar, then exited the bar and opened his trunk, admiring his catch like a fisherman, and returned to his apartment.
That's a big one.
Back at his apartment, he had sexual intercourse with the corpse before dismembering and disposing the remains in a similar manner as the previous 2 victims. Koo's mother called the police to report the disappearance of her daughter and put up hundreds of flyers asking for information, but did not receive any responses regarding her daughter's location or status.
So Cindy Schall, on January 7th of 73, Kemper, who had moved back in with his mom, because that's a great working relationship, was driving around Cabrillo College campus and picked up 18-year-old student Cynthia Schall. He drove to a sequestered wooded area and fatally shot her with a .22 caliber pistol. He placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove to his mother's house, where he kept her body hidden in the closet in his room overnight. When his mother left for work the next morning, he had sex with, removed the bullet from Shaw's corpse before dismembering and decapitating her in his mom's bathtub. Kemper kept Shaw's severed head for several days, regularly engaging in sex with it, before burying it in his mother's garden, facing upward toward her bedroom, later remarking that his mother always wanted people to look up to her. Ugh. God. He discarded the rest of her remains by throwing them off a cliff. Over the course of the following few weeks, all but Shaw's head and right hand were discovered and pieced together like a macabre jigsaw puzzle. Police and a pathologist determined that she had been hacked to death, then cut into pieces with a power saw.
Oof. Okay. Rosalind Thorpe and Allison Liu. On February 5th, 1973, after a heated argument with his mother, he got in a fight with his mama, Kemper left his house in search of possible victims. With heightened suspicion of serial killer preying on hitchhikers in the Santa Cruz area, students were advised to get only into cars with university stickers on them. Kemper had such a sticker as his mother worked at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Oh, God. He encountered 23-year-old Rosalind Heather Thorpe and 20-year-old Allison Liu. There's a lot of names on the UCSC campus. According to Kemper, Thorpe entered his car first, which reassured Liu to also enter. He then fatally shot Thorpe and Liu with his .22 caliber pistol and wrapped bodies in blankets. Kemper again brought his victims back to his mother's house. This time, he beheaded them in his car and carried the headless corpses into his mother's house to have sexual intercourse with them. He then dismembered their bodies.
As one does.
I just keep thinking, like, you beheaded somebody in a car, like, first of all, I can't even get my purse in my car without, like, twisting and turning and being uncomfortable. And
Put my toddler in a car.
Yeah,
like, come on.
And then you, like, where's all the blood and the like, seriously, I don't get it, but okay. He then dismembered the bodies, removed the bullets to prevent identification, and the next morning discarded their remains. Some remains were found at Eden Canyon a week later, and more were found near Highway 1 in March. When questioned in an interview as to why he removed his victims' heads before performing sexual acts on the bodies, oh boy, he does explain. The head trip fantasies were a bit like a trophy. You know, the head is where everything is at, the brain, the eyes, mouth. That's the person. I remember being told as a kid, you cut off the head and the body dies. The body is nothing after the head is cut off. Well, that's not quite true. There's a lot left in the girl's body without the head. Okay.
We should have taken a drink every time this guy put his dick in something that he shouldn't have.
I would not
we'd be dead by now.
Coherent right now, seriously.
Oh, it's so bad. Anyway, Clarnell Sternberg
Moving
and
forward.
Sally Hallett. Anyway, spot of tea and we'll move on. On April 20th, 1973, after coming home from a party, 52-year-old Clarnell, his mama, awakened her son with her arrival. While sitting in her bed reading a book, she noticed Kemper enter her room and said to him, "I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Kemper replied, "Nope, good night." He then waited for her to fall asleep before returning to bludgeon her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a knife. He subsequently decapitated her and made her head bang him with her severed head, before using it as a dartboard, which that's kind of funny, honestly. Kemper stated that he put her head on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour, then threw darts at it, and ultimately smashed her face in. He also cut out her tongue and larynx and put them in a garbage disposal. However, the garbage disposal could not break down the tough vocal cords, ejected the tissue back into the sink. That's gross. That seemed appropriate, Kemper said, as much as she'd bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years.
Finally.
Kemper then
If
hid
he'd have just done this at the beginning, I don't think all those other ladies would be dead. Yeah, if he'd just killed his mother the way he wanted to. Yeah, I just think he wanted to kill his mother this whole time. And then finally did.
Issues. What a creep.
Yeah, he's nasty.
He hid his mother's corpse in a closet and went out for a drink. Well, yeah. Upon his return, he invited his mother's best friend, 59-year-old Sarah Taylor Sally Hallett, over to the house for dinner and a movie. When Hallett arrived, Kemper strangled her to death, decapitated her, and spent the night with her body. He subsequently put the corpse in a closet, obscured any outward sign of disturbance, and left a note to the police. It read, approximately 5:15 a.m. Saturday. No need for her to suffer any more at the hands of this horrible, murderous butcher. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it. Not sloppy and incomplete, gents. Just a lack of time. I got things to do. Kemper then fled the scene, driving to Pueblo, Colorado. After not hearing any news on the radio about the murders of his mother and Hallett, when he arrived, he found a phone booth and called the police. He confessed to the murders of his mother and Hallett, but the police did not take his call seriously and told him, call back some other time.
Seriously.
Right?
Oh, my God.
Call back, you weirdo. Several hours later, Kemper called again, asked to speak to an officer that he personally knew, confessed to the killing, and waited for the police to arrive and take him into the custody, where he ended up confessing to the murders of the 6 students. When asked why he turned himself in, he said, the original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real emotional purpose. It was just a pure waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't handle it much longer. Toward the end there, I started feeling the folly of the whole damn thing. Oh, what a folly. It was just a hilarious series of events. And at the point of near exhaustion, near collapse. Oh, the poor guy, he was tired.
He's been fucking heads for too long. He's exhausted.
Poor guy. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I said the hell with it, and called it all off.
Let's just call the whole thing off now. I've been watching this, and I always forget that he's the guy on, oh, shit. Why can't I remember anything tonight? That show I've been watching on Netflix. Mindhunter. And he's
although in his case, it should be called Mindfucker.
No shit. But he's also on the second season. He plays a part in the second season where he kind of helps them along with discovering people and stuff like that. So he's still even kicking in the second season. But moving on. So Kemper, it's actually the second season of Mindhunter is way better than the first. I thoroughly recommend it. Yeah. It's really good. So, and he is in it. He plays, he has a few spotlight cameos in it. So anyway, he's in the same prison as Manson. And so it's just funny how, because Kemper is so tall.
You'll find,
Kemper is so tall, and Manson is so short that Kemper just rags on Manson like endlessly to the cops. Like, he's really short. Don't stare at him because he's so short. Just don't stare at it. Like, you have to pretend like it's not a big deal, or he'll get pissed. So, and then Manson comes in and stands on chairs, and it's really funny. But anyway, moving on. Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder on May 7th, 1973. Due to Kemper's explicit and detailed confession, his counsel's only option was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity to the charges. Sorry. Kemper,
stop telling us what you did. We got
Could you please stop giving us the details? Kemper twice tried to commit suicide in custody. His trial went ahead on October 23rd, 1973. 3 court-appointed psychiatrists found Kemper to be legally sane. One of the psychiatrists, Dr. Joel Fort, investigated his juvenile records and the diagnosis that he was once psychotic. Fort also interviewed Kemper, including under truth serum, and relayed to the court that Kemper had engaged in cannibalism, alleging that he sliced flesh from the legs of his victims, then cooked and consumed these strips of flesh in a casserole. Ew. Ugh. Nevertheless, I won't be having a casserole for a while because I just had a huge steak. I just had a giant steak, and so now I'm like, oh, God, meat. I'm going to, die now. Nevertheless, Fort determined that Kemper was fully cognizant in each case and stated that Kemper enjoyed the prospect of the infamy associated with being labeled a murderer. Kemper later recanted the confession of cannibalism. On November 1st, Kemper took the stand. He testified that he killed the victims because he wanted them for myself, like possessions, and attempted to convince the jury that he was insane based on the reasoning that his actions could only have been committed by someone with an abhorrent mind. He said two beings inhibited his body, and that when the killer personality took over, it was kind of like blacking out. On November 8th,
It was that way for those people who were
Yeah,
dead when you started
exactly.
phoning them.
They totally blacked out, dude. On November 8th, 1973, the six-woman jury took 5 hours to declare Kemper sane and guilty on all counts. He asked for the death penalty, requesting death by torture. However, he would have loved it too much.
Would have gotten off on that.
However,
yep.
with the moratorium placed on capital punishment by the Supreme Court at the time, he instead received 7 years to life for each count, with these terms to be served concurrently, and was sentenced to the California Medical Facility. Since then, Kemper has waived his right to a parole hearing several times and has said he is happy in prison. Kemper
wasn't happy.
Right. Kemper was denied parole in 2017 and is next eligible in 2024. Wow. He is fucking crazy. Yeah. Sorry, but damn.
And he did, I think I took it out because there was a lot more on him, but he did end up being in a cell block in real life by Manson, and I forget what other serial killer he was near, but he liked to mess with him, again, with his, the stuff that he had learned about administering the psychiatric testing on other patients. He would kind of mess with guys in prison that way. So he is still alive and he's enjoying himself, which is unfortunate, but he would have enjoyed a torturous death too. So we can only hope that there's a depth of hell big enough for him, but that still doesn't help the victims. So as much as we giggle, that one's fucked up, but as I said, way more interesting, the real life, than the inspired by the Black Christmas film. He also inspired other popular culture things, such as the character of Buffalo Bill in the 1988 novel, The Silence of the Lambs, and the later 1991 film adaptation. Like Kemper, Bill begins his criminal life by fatally shooting his grandparents as a teenager. But I bet you he never shouted, "It puts the lotion on the skin,
exactly.
or I have to get the hose again."
Put the fucking dog in the basket. Sorry.
Put the lotion. Oh, God. American author Gene Kuntz cited Kemper as an inspiration for the character Edgler Vess in the 1996 novel Intensity.
It's a great book.
I have mixed feelings about Kuntz's newer work. That's just my humble
seen it.
opinion, but Intensity is like a really good book.
It's fucked up.
Creepy as hell. It's intense. It's nonstop. It's just, yeah. So I didn't know that he was the inspiration for that. Patrick Bateman in the 2000 film American Psycho mistakenly attributes a quote by Kemper to Ed Gein, saying, "You know what Ed Gein said about women? He said, when I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think two things. One part of me wants to take her out, talk to her, be real nice and sweet, and treat her right. And the other part of me wonders what her head would look like on a stick." Kemper is betrayed by the actor Cameron Britton in the 2017 Netflix television drama series Mindhunter, as Christy had mentioned.
Sweet. Well, that was wonderful. I think we're going to label this,
Isn't that lovely?
This show more about Ed Kemper than Black Christmas, because we talked more about him than we did the show, but we can do both. So I think we'll share. We can share it.
We can do what we want. Thank you for spending your evening with me, girl. I know this was a lot of reading when there was only two of us, and it's Sunday night, especially for you. It's late, but thank you for that.
Late is 8, it's 8 o'clock, sweetie. It's going to be okay. I can stay up late. I'm a big girl.
I'm a grown up. Not me. I was traveling with kids this weekend. I'm tired.
I bet. I bet.
I did the same hotel room with little kids is never.
Oh, hell no. I couldn't sleep like that either. I did big kid things today and vacuumed under our bed. We have one of those beds where like you can like the mattress raises. It's like one of those like motorized. So I raised it up and oh my God, I could have made a new dog with the hair under the bed.
Yeah.
So I vacuumed all that up and I've dusted. I did some spring cleaning and then I had a big steak. So
Nice.
it's been a wonderful day. And then got to talk about head fucking. So I think it's a well-rounded day for real.
Oh, do you have any good, real quick, I know we ran long, but do you have any good indie films or horror movie recommendations that I might not have seen because we're looking for a movie night tonight?
Movie night tonight. If you can get Midsummer, watch that.
Okay.
Let me think about it for a second, and because I have seen some, but when people ask me, my brain just like completely freezes. I did watch this weekend. I watched Rocket Man, which was really good,
I want to see that one.
and Yesterday, which was really good. And these are not horror movies, but Yesterday is where the guy gets hit by the bus and wakes up in a new dimension where the Beatles didn't exist. And so he like then sings all the Beatles songs and becomes like a big superstar. Anyway, it's really cute. It's a cute movie. I enjoyed it. And then I watched the new Men in Black. It was stupid. Don't watch that.
Oh, that's good to know. That's too bad because the chemistry between the actors is so good. But.
Yeah, and I thought the girl's so cute. It was so cheesy. I couldn't. And I love Men in Black stuff. So I thought they've got me. It's Men in Black. I love Men in Black, and I couldn't do it. So I mean, if you're bored, go for it, but not with your critic husband. He'd be like, "Oh my God, kill me." Let me think about it because I have.
We love them in Ragnarok. Those two are in Thor Ragnarok together. And they're so like really good in that one. But it's unfortunate.
I wouldn't do it.
I'll give my.
I said I wouldn't do it.
I will abstain from that.
Don't believe that. Don't be. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no,
I'm just talking.
I was moving forward. Sorry.
No, you move forward.
You move forward. No, you move forward. I'll push you off and you'll land on a Christmas tree and get impaled. How about that? But I won't fuck your head. So that's the promise I can give you. And with that...
Thank you. Just put it on a spike.
I will murder you, but I won't fuck your head afterwards.
Thanks.
So you're welcome. I changed my socials. They are now consistent.
What?
I am Moni Bear across the board. That is Instagram and Twitter. MoniBarre. Christy, where can we find you?
I am at Creepin' on Instagram and at Creepin_it on Twitter.
And I think I got this out of order of how we normally do things because we need our yard later. The next podcast is the Bell Witch. That story fucked me up. Tell me a little bit about what we're doing next time.
Well, Halloween's here and witches, so I think us diving into the Bell Witch story, as deep and convoluted and fucked up as it is, I'm wondering if we might need to do a bonus episode of like a part 2, because this story is really long. So
it is.
I'm going to see what I can fit on one. We might maybe do a supersized episode or do 2, but maybe this will... motivate me to go to Hell's Church because supposedly there's a witch there. So that might be an interesting tie-in with the whole Bell Witch shit. So I'm kind of excited about it. Finally, we've got so many topics that we can cover, and this one's kind of been hanging out and I think me and you both have debated on it. So if you have anything you want to contribute to the doc or whatever, by all means, I would enjoy any new or different outlooks or spins on it. So
sounds good. Yeah, it's super interesting story, and it creeps the hell out of me to this day. So I'm excited to talk about it.
It's such a weird. So many witnesses, I think, is the crazy part about it. So I love hearing the story, and I think it was Astonishing Legends did a fantastic several. I think it was 4 parts.
Mm-hmm. And they always do things so well. I think that was one of the reasons why we shied off from doing it closer to when they did it, because it was just so well covered,
Yeah, totally. So, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yay. Thanks, everybody, for listening. And Christy and Yardley, wherever you are. Fred's probably footballing.
He's footballing it up, I bet.
Yeah, which is a good life, too.
Yes.
So with that, we bid you adieu. Thanks, creepers. Bye.